Hey, everybody. It's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily.
I got to keep Emily on her toes.
No,
gotta
you have been so much like, what day is it today? It has been a little bit of a long week, but not a bad week. But I think we have had a lot of gloomy weather over here. And so it's just really, I guess, well, I said it didn't make the week feel long. I guess it did. But hopefully we have some good weather coming up this weekend. But as far as fall goes, good weather. I mean, sometimes for fall, this is what we get is just gloomy days. And we're lucky when we don't have rain.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I'm okay with it. I'm not at the point yet where I'm missing the sun. A few weeks ago, I was just getting fried by it. So I'm okay with a little bit of cloud cover. Some cool temps is really nice, especially when you're out there trying to focus on, keeping up with these schools that we've been trying to keep on top of.
Well, but you're making a great point is that the fish are at the point where they are in schools and they are moving around and we are trying to keep on top of them. So water temperatures we have seen continue to come down. That is the trend that we are looking for at this point. And I want to say the last time we were out, we found a very consistent 55 to 56 degrees. Sometimes in fall, you see, I think, wider variations. You get, I don't know, but it was very consistent at that temperature. And so we were finding fish pushing out into those deeper areas, schooling up and eating.
Yeah. So it's really fun this time of year when the fish start to get into their winter thing, but there's still some transition happening. But I think a lot of times species start to separate. And so we've seen that with our bluegills and our crappies. We'll find an open water school, we'll go out and we'll pitch at them a bit. They kind of get leery after a little bit, but then we can kind of suck back into the shoreline and find that really deep remnants of weed edge, and then you can cast at that. And almost always it's going to be a bluegill. We have caught a couple bass. You had a really nice pike the other day. Hey, Ray. But there, so like, just don't be afraid to move around. And just, you're going to have to stay on top of stuff because they're swimming around eating.
Oh gosh, but it is the time of year where if you can keep track of where those weed beds are or where those fish are moving to, that as we get ever closer to ice season, then you'll have those clues to know where to drill your first hole. So I know that is getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves, but we have a really cool tool that I think will bridge the gap between all of those seasons. So no matter where you're at or what season you hope it is, I think that this is the thing for you. So let's bring him into the show. Welcome, Captain Mike. Thanks for being here.
Hey, great to be here, guys. It's my pleasure. As you can see, I'm down here in Florida in my sleeveless shirt. So when you started out with the can't wait for the cool weather, that's what I ran from.
Yeah.
I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I had my fill of that area, which I still miss it. But man, I love being down here. So
yeah,
I love to travel to those places and then come home to the warm weather. So
there you go.
Well, and we'll all come visit you too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's beautiful down here.
Well, we are just getting to meet you for the first time here tonight. And so for the people at home who are just meeting you as well, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Mike. I'm a captain down here in Southwest Florida. I live on Marco Island, and I've been hunting and fishing my whole life. I work in the ER as an ER physician assistant for 25 years. So I've had, from hunting and fishing, you always run into things that go wrong. One of them, if you're an aggressive fisherman like I am, or most people that fish a lot, I would have ultimately got hooks in me. But working in the ER was when it really started to become, especially in a coastal ER like I am, it became more and more prevalent. And as a fishing guide and a guy out on the water all the time, the string method was the greatest thing to happen to hook removal, so that you could go out the way that you went in. Everything about a hook is defeating the barb, right? So when some ingenious captain, and I know a bunch of them that take credit for it, I don't know who it was, but when some guy decided that pushing down on the shank of the hook would release that barb off the roof of the hole that it was in, and then you could pull it backwards. I mean, that was just ingenious. So one of the problems with that, though, is that if you're alone, it usually takes two people to do it right. So it never fully works all the time, although it's very effective. But B, a lot of times it's much more effective or totally ineffective if you're alone. So with this tool, this is the flagship tool. With this tool, you can go left-handed, right-handed, backwards, and the upper extremities was really the problem. But you can get these out anywhere now, and I have guides now who tell me that it's so easy to use that they can get their clients to pull their flies out of their back when they catch flies up on the pulling platform. So, but how it all happened was, being in the field and then being in the ER, the bulb never really went off in my head until a few years ago when I was in the ER, and I was just getting more and more frustrated. Removals. And the more people you get to know, and the more captains you meet, and the more people you meet from all over the country that come down here in the wintertime, you realize that, this happens a lot more than you think. A lot of people it happened to don't want to talk about it or admit that it happens because they think that makes them a bad fisherman. But in fact, most of the most aggressive, best fishermen in the world get hooked a lot because they're so aggressive and moving so fast. So when I was in the ER one day, we had a couple back-to-back come in, and it's single hooks, treble, 2 out of 3 treble hooks, big hooks, small hooks. And it just frustrated me to the point where I was like, this is an opportunity. We don't have a tool for this. We have a tool for everything in the ER. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, we need to have a tool for this. So at that point, I realized I may have something. So I zipped my mouth. I didn't even tell my wife. And I came home and I got in the garage for a couple of days, and I started bending screwdrivers and welding stuff. And ultimately I came up with my own prototype and started, using it on myself, and it worked beautifully. And then, we wound up getting a few patents and copyrights and trademarks, and we developed this one. Now, how it works is, if this hook is, if that hook is in you like that, see how well you guys could see that. This hook around the tool goes around the throat of the hook, and then this head goes over the shank. So essentially, this is the finger, and this is the string in the string method, except now you could do it with one hand. So string, finger, press down like that, just to disengage the barb. Now you got to realize that barb is so small. I don't know if you can see it. You don't have to stand it on its head to get that to disengage. I actually built it into the tool. There's a 5-degree offset here, and I have this trigger and thumb rest so that you feel real confident it's not going to slip out of your hands. So all you have to do is engage this hook that's stuck in you, like I said earlier, and then just straighten the tool out, and that's more than enough. And then you just pull straight back, and it comes right out. Now, the only resistance you will get is, your epidermis and dermis there is very elastic. It's always going to be that. So that's why with the string method, it was the pop. Well, with this tool, you can do it however you want, backwards, left-handed, right-handed. With this tool, you just engage it and do the same thing, and then it's just a quick pop, and it comes right out. So, we ran that concept. We went to the first ICAST with that tool. And then we started developing other tools. We had guys at the show that were, professional fly guys, crappie guys, with smaller hooks that were saying, hey, what is your size variation on this tool? And this one will go from a size 1 all the way up to a 9/0. So that's, for us down here in saltwater, that's a pretty wide, sport fishing air, that's backcountry, near shore, inshore hooks that we usually deal with. But with these guys, were like, well, I fish the Kevin Van Dam short shank, which is this, is actually shorter than a 1, or I have little crappie jigs and panfish jigs or trout. So then we developed, and we call it the dink. This dink, if you can see it there, the metrics on this are way different.
Oh my gosh.
If I put it head to head, you can see the metrics on that are way different. So this is for much smaller. Now this will do like a size 14 beadhead fly or a sabiki up to a size 1. And then this takes over from size 1 all the way up to a 9/0. So if you have one of each of these, anything from a fly, you know, a little scud, all the way up to a tarpon hook or a musky hook, you're covered. And what we ultimately did was, you know, I had the guys from the Great Lakes calling me saying, you know, we fished this short shank KVD. We love the dink metric, but can we get it in this handle? So our line now is almost complete, but what we're going to offer this for the guys who love their vest jewelry. And then we're going to have this stem, this metric, we're going to have it in this handle. And then we also have a kayak version, which is this one, where you can wear it or tie it to your kayak or put it wherever you want. You put your fingers in there so you don't drop it or pull it out, and it's, you know, it's real easy. You can put it on a carabiner if you want. And this one will also have that other metric. So we'll have 2 of these, with this one with 2 different stems, this one with 2 different stems, and then this one for the fly guys or the sabiki guys that, you know, that throw cast nets that get sabikis in them all day long. And this one here comes in chartreuse, blue, hot pink, and white. You know, we showed up at ICAST. It was really fortunate for us. This one was originally like this. And what I found, I brought a bunch of samples to ICAST, and as we were showing guys, you know, the handle was actually a little bit cumbersome. So we turned it over, and now you can really get down low and dirty and get in there and get these hooks out. So we changed the design to that. And then this one also, we had it this way at first, but now we switched it so that it's like this. So the access to those little hooks is so much better. So we are, you know, we're changing our packaging now, but our line is going to be those 5 tools that will cover sport fishing, you know, as far as I can see, for guys that are, you know, doing regular sport fishing, anything from, you know, panfish to muskies and, you know, medium-sized offshore fish, dolphin. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But the whole concept was, you know, was a blessing. It just happened to, by a gift of God, jumped in my head one day, and I ran with it. If I would have, my background is, you know, I come from a construction family, and I went back to school. I got a biology degree, and then I went back to school and I got a medical degree. And you know, I had 0 retail experience and manufacturing experience, but I just knew that this was such a unique answer to a long-standing problem that the industry had, and the medical field, that it was such a cool epiphany when it happened. I'm like, man, I'm solving a problem here for all of the medical field and the entire fishing field. And when you walk into ICAST and you see everyone from all over the world and all this crazy technology and electronics and power poles and this and that, and I walk in there with this, and we got so much attention. These guys were like, that is the simplest, coolest thing that we have seen at ICAST in such a long time. So it's been a real thrill. It's been a really cool ride. But we're not done. We got a lot of other really cool ideas, and we're going to keep growing it and getting it out there in different configurations, so that, you know, whatever your unique situation is or however you fish, we're going to have a solution for that. But, you know, we are also going to work on, you know, we're getting disposables for the ERs if they want to just one use throw away. We're getting different versions of the regular tool. This is an FDA licensed and registered fishing product. Believe it or not, we thought as medical people, we knew that we would have to get this FDA licensed. because it's a class 1 510K exempt, product. So it's not intrusive at all, but to use it near with a human, you have to have this classification. And we knew we would need that for the emergency room. We never thought in a million years we would need it for the fishing world, but the FDA deemed it, as a over-the-counter medical device. So it is now. We stand here now with the only FDA that I'm aware of, the only FDA licensed fishing product or fishing tool in the world, which is kind of unique.
That's
but
awesome.
I really do think that this is going to revolutionize a problem that people didn't want to talk about, or a problem that people think makes them less of a fisherman, or it happens to all of us, and mostly the guys who are the best. But it also is going to wind up, in my opinion, as being the standard of care for fish hook removal in the ER. Because if you look at our Bibles of emergency medicine, like Tintinelli's and Robertson Hedges and all, they have basically the same things that you and I already know about: the string method, pushing it through, clipping it, pulling it back out, all those things. Nothing that solved the problem of, hey, we know how to go out the way it went in. We don't need to create any more tissue damage. We don't need 2 holes. It goes out the way it comes in. If you need a tetanus shot, no problem. You need antibiotics. But the thing is, what I tell people, like, nobody knows their medical history better than they do, right? So, if you're out in the field and you pull a hook out of yourself, you clean it up with some alcohol, put a Band-Aid on it, you could call your doctor when you get home and set up for a tetanus shot. You can have antibiotics called in for you. But man, I've met guys that, were 80 miles offshore with 3 of their buddies. They were out there 20 minutes and got a hook in them, and they ran 80 miles all the way back in.
Oh my God.
Spend 6 hours in an emergency room. It ruined his buddy's days, all the gas, all the bait, all the beer, all the ice, to come back and get a hook removed when they could have pulled it out and cleaned it up, put a Band-Aid on, and call your doctor when you get home. So, and that's important for us down here. We're in an endemic Vibrio area, so if it's summertime and the water's hot, you got to be careful. But as far as getting the hook removed, that's something you can now do with this in the field better than anything that has ever been out there before, in both worlds, actually. Yeah. So pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And when you look at the things, especially when you're talking about ICAST, all the products that people have out, all the things, the electronics and everything. The thing about it is, so many of those products are like species or application specific. It's for this or it's for that. And when you think about fishing at its basis, at the core, you need maybe a pole, but either way, a line and a hook, like at the very base, that's what you need. Every angler, every situation, you're laughing at me, but it's true. You need a hook and you need a way to get that fish back. And so I think no matter what people are out there catching, I think that this is so cool that there is, your 2 options for sizes, depending on what you're using. And I think it's really funny that you call it the dink.
Yeah, and we wound up calling the original one the OG, and then this one we named it the Yak because we designed it with kayakers in mind. But it was cool. I mean, ICAST was such a cool thing because you walk in there and it's almost, everything new seems to be a different color lure, a different size this, a different wiggle, a different blank, a different reel, but nothing really new. And then on the other side is this race, this electronics race where, now there's forward facing sonar and, all these different ways to weigh fish and all this stuff. And, one thing that was overlooked was this simple little thing that people didn't have any way of removing hooks from them. And when I tell you, I mean, legends in the field were coming up to my table going, buddy, this is the coolest thing I have seen in so long, because, everything's kind of a new mousetrap or something very technical, but this was an overlooked, needed, simple solution that everyone kind of, turned a blind eye to, me included, until finally, God bless me with an epiphany. But it was really cool. And to meet some of the the legends of my childhood that I watched on TV, and some of the current ones that I watch on TV right now. Like when I'm working here, I have the TV on and I see these guys and I'm like, oh, I was talking to him yesterday. You know, to have those guys endorse you and say, man, this is super cool. You know, that to me is a thrill. And like I alluded to before, you know, I knew it was something really cool. And I had no background in retail or anything. And in hindsight now, I have some big executives sometimes they'll say, hey, how did you get to where you are? Like, what's your background? And I'm like, where'd you go to school for business? Or, you know, what's your marketing degree? And I'm like, I don't have any of that. I'm just stubborn, hard-headed, and you know, I'm working my way through it. I surrounded myself with wonderful, intelligent people. And, you know, I joke with them and I say, you know, if it's a blessing that I didn't know what it would take, because it probably would have scared me off and this still wouldn't be out there. Mm-hmm. But because I didn't know, like the ignorance was kind of a gift, because it probably, if I would have known all the things that I would, you know, FDA approval, this manufacturing, that patent, this, that, you know, it probably would have intimidated me to kind of back away. But you know, not knowing, I think, was a blessing, because I just kept pushing forward, and here we are. And it's doing phenomenal, and we got great things on the horizon and great people around us and great endorsements. And you know, when you go to ICAST and they wrap their arms around you, that's a pretty good endorsement. So
well, I really like the fact that we talk a lot about how things are designed by fishermen for fishermen, right? And so the fact that this is not only designed by a fisherman for fishermen, it's also a medical professional design device for medical professionals.
Yeah, so, it transcends both fields. It's really really
to have that crossover is so awesome, and because that's just what we talk about with a lot of our guests. The other thing I really like about this is that I don't know if this is an intended thing for you, but the first thing that comes to mind when I think about all the colors and variations you have for your tools, you could have went like a black handle or a sterile white handle, or just like, you know, something very plain and just like very medical, but you made it a fun thing. You made it high visibility. And so like when we talk a lot about bringing kids out, and so when you have something like that, and if they happen to get something in their arm, it's a little less scary when there's something like nice and colorful coming towards your arm, and then it's like kind of more like a fun thing instead of like you know, but you know what I'm saying, it's like less sterile, it's less scary of a tool.
I landed on that basically by looking at lures. I'm like, you know, this thing, some of the coolest colors that we see, you know, are on lures, and you know, people say, oh, that color there, that's for the fisherman, not the fish, and you know, that kind of thing. But some of the colors are so cool, and I looked at it and I'm like, I'm gonna get some of these colors from these lures and make this tool in some cool colors. And at first, I to be totally honest, at first I was like, it's a white handled tool. And then people were like, well, are you making colors? And I'm like, seriously? Like, you want colors? It's for removing a fish. And they're like, oh yeah. And then, you know, when you think about it, they started telling me, they're like, well, look at skiing, look at scuba diving, look at everything. Everything out there now is some kind of ensemble of super cool, bright colors. And so they're like, oh, you absolutely have to do colors. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do colors, I'm going to do lure colors and cool colors. And, you know, so we actually have some things right now where some companies that we may work out agreements with, that they have their own color, like their specific brand color, to do, you know, unique colors just for them in their color. That's their, you know, to go with their brand. So cool. It's a lot of fun. I mean, these things opened up to me as I was moving forward. Like there was no real, I didn't know any of this stuff going in, and there was no real plan. As it falls on me, you know, like I said, I surrounded myself with super smart, wonderful people that are equally as enthusiastic, and we just kind of say, okay, well, let's do this. This would be awesome, and we bounce it off each other and keep moving forward. And it's been a phenomenal ride. I'll give you another funny story. Everybody says that our logo is a a praying mantis.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, well, how the heck did you land on a fishing tool with a praying mantis? But if you look at that tool,
Yeah.
that is a praying mantis. I mean,
if I've ever seen one.
That's actually really cool.
That is definitely a praying mantis. So, one of the things with fishing is it's such a big, broad market that, like, when you try to come up with names, DHukr, this, that, there's pirate girls with big boobs, and all the things that have to go with hook or hook remover or DHukr and all that. So, so many things were gobbled up. So the name DHukr is just phonetic DHukr. That we kind of landed on and thought it would be unique and cool. And then when I went to do a logo, I wanted to do like a mantis shrimp, how because I got hit by them a couple of times scuba diving, and things, and they're all taken, there's, and I don't know that they're necessarily, have copyrights or trademarks on them or anything, but they were taken. And I was just sitting here like this one night, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm going, holy crap, that is a praying mantis. So I just ran with it. I'm like, it'll be unique, a praying mantis in the fishing world. But if you think about it, just like a mantis shrimp, a praying mantis just snatches, and this thing just snatches hooks out of you, just like a praying mantis would snatch a bug out of a bush. So pretty cool. But that's how simplistic some of this stuff was, and we just kept running with it, and we're having a ball. It's really cool. And
so I'm not done asking questions yet, but we do have actually somebody already in the comments. Are these available in stores? Is this online only? Tell us a little bit about that.
So as it stands right now, we have local stores down here, like our Sunshine Ace Hardware carries them down here, all the local marinas and a couple of mom and pop shops. I've sold to mom and pop shops all over the country, actually all over the world. We've sold in all 50 states already. But as far as big brand stores, the big ones, we are not in them yet. And part of that falls back on the previous stories. When I launched this, marketing and packaging and all these things that come with a product, you don't realize unless you have some kind of a background in it. So naturally, our mom and pop packaging was sufficient for them, but you can't do mom and pop packaging in big chain stores and Bass Pros and academies and tackle warehouses and things like that. So we now have transferred all of our packaging to clamshell plastic and the qualifying packaging for the big stores, and we are currently in negotiations to get them all over the country in all the big stores. But to get one right now, the fastest way would be, we are on Amazon, we are on West Marine, all e-commerce. We are, and we have our website that you can get them, and they'll just ship them out to you. So we are currently right now, Amazon, if you're on Prime, you get free shipping. So that's a pretty good deal. Our e-commerce site right now, if you sign up and give us your email so that we can, keep you in the loop about what we're doing, we'll ship it to you for free. So there's some cool things going on. They're the three major places that you can get it right now, unless you're local. But trust me when I tell you, we have sold in all 50 states. So do not hesitate to call your local mom and pop shop and see if they have it, because they just might.
So I heard this was my reason to plan a vacation to Florida to go get one.
Come down, we'll fish.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. There was a guy, he's a great friend of mine now, and he's actually a part of the company, who I met at ICAST, and he was there doing press stuff, and we got to talking, and became friendly. He says, I'm going to come down and see you one of these days. And after this year's ICAST, he came down and spent a couple of days with me here. We fished and hung out. So it's been cool. I mean, the fishing community, as you guys well know, the fishing community is made up of great people. So, even when you come across, issues or stumbles, the people that you're dealing with are like the salt of the earth kind of fishing outdoor people, and it's such a joy to solve problems with them. And it's cool. It's not like a cutthroat corporate, hey, you screwed up, you're out of here. And everybody's real nice, and you work things out, and it's really cool. So I have met some wonderful people, and it's been a great ride. But that's how you can get them the easiest right now. But trust me, we're getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Okay. And I also was wondering, do they float?
No. So one of the things, so that was an issue. So I did put a lanyard in here, and I do sell a float that does float the tool if it falls off. But
Yeah.
you could put your own in there. But the reason I didn't was because when I designed this, I have a construction background, and when I buy things, I'd rather, buy once, cry once, buy the good stuff and not have a collection of junk. So when I built this, I wanted to build it like a tank. I didn't want handles cracking, breaking, we're in the heat down here. I didn't want things dry, rotten. So this is solid as a rock, and this is solid stainless steel. And there's I insisted on no moving parts. Whether you're in salt water or not, things corrode. A grain of sand can ruin a spring, anything like that. So, it's all one piece, solid, no moving parts. And it is, it's as hard as a rock. And I built them all that way. So they don't float, but there's holes in them to put things through to make it float. And I would recommend that. But I would rather sacrifice the floatability and have a higher quality tool and give you guys the option of putting whatever you want to make it float than build a cheap tool. I didn't want my name associated with anything that wasn't built like a tank.
Well, and I like that, because I think not for us to, I'm sitting here thinking of more stuff, and that's a great point, because a lot of our stuff up in the Midwest, we beat up ice fishing, when you cross it over, and especially the little dink version that you have, that would come in handy a lot of times in ice fishing, because I don't know if you're familiar very much, but because you're vertical fishing so much. And one of the big issues with ice fishing is that you get the fish to the hole, but getting it up through the hole, then you have a loaded rod, and your face is over the top of it, because you're trying, and the number of times you smoke yourself in the face with a little jig or something. Like, it's amazing that there isn't more people that get hooked up, but that, having something like that, like you said, isn't going to break, that you can use through all the seasons up here. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that was a big prerequisite for me, because I knew if I was blessed at all by this idea, that I would be, in places like this. And I did not want to have something that was not, rock solid or, breaking or, anything at all. Now there are, there's a lot of cheaper options, but and they were all offered to me, and I said no to all of them, because and then of course, it wound up needing FDA licensing and registering. So, that has its own set of usability studies, strength studies, drop studies, all the things that go into all that. And you need a robust tool to be able to pass all those metrics. So, thankfully, we did it from the beginning and really didn't have to change anything. But that in mind is why I made samples of these, and ultimately the handles being underneath wound up being an issue. So we flipped the handles and changed it a little bit, and now it's just so much easier to engage the tool that it's worth the minor delay to wait for it to be right, because I want everything to be the best that it can be, and because my face on podcasts like this and my name are associated with this, and I won't settle for anything less. So
right. So I might have a silly question for you. So let's say you're out, there's a couple of guys in there out fishing a tournament, and a guy gets hooked. You use the tool, and then you go back to fishing, and then let's say like down the road, then the other guy or the same guy or the other guy gets hooked. So then you need to use the tool again. Do you have any recommendations on cleaning the tool, or does it does it need to be cleaned or something like that?
So all of that was part of the FDA's licensing and all. So when you buy this now, there's what we call an IFU, an instructions for use, and in that, it's one of those credit card size papers that opens up to the size of a bed sheet with all the stuff on it. But to sum it all up, 70% a wipe down with 70% isopropyl alcohol is sufficient. It in most cases, in nearly every case, it doesn't touch the skin per se. There's not a lot of blood in the I mean, I pull hooks out of me all the time, and I rarely ever bleed from them. These are superficial puncture wounds. But if you do get a small superficial vessel or something and it needs to be cleaned, 70% isopropyl alcohol, chlorhexidine, alcohol wipes that you keep on your boat, any kind of appropriate antiseptic is sufficient.
Cool.
So that's a great question.
And I got to refill my Band-Aid stash.
There was something. Let me grab something.
Yeah. So all you guys listening out there, just so you know, it's not sufficient to shake it off in the lake water. Put it in your mouth. Use the alcohol pad. Yeah. Then put it back and put it away.
So, these are like those little boat floats.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What I did was I made them so they can go through this, but the idea was we don't offer it, but for whatever you're not allergic to or whatever you want, you can put Band-Aids, antiseptic, one of those little squeeze things of triple antibiotic, an alcohol wipe in there, and close that up and keep it right with your tool, and it has our little logo on it.
I like what? Okay, wait. I actually love that so much. And part of here's why is the other day in the boat, I got like pricked by a crappie fin or something, whatever. It was stupid, but it was enough that it made me look in my bag, because I was like, oh, I have a first aid kit. I wonder what's in there. And I had not opened up that first aid kit in a very long time. And I think the things inside were still good, but all of them were totally not relevant to anything. It was like sunscreen, lip balm, like things that are not at all first aid kitty. And so but it made me realize that I just assumed that it was good stuff. I threw it in, a first aid kit. But like ultimately I had not used it in so long, And so to whittle it down to just those bare minimum little things, like nobody's doing stitches out in the boat, like in those cases, no, I'm saying you go back in for those things. But in these little instances where I got like pricked by a crappie fin, or you get scratched by a gill, just these little things that you can just like kind of clean and move on. Yeah. You don't need necessarily a huge first aid kit for those things. And so I just like that idea of having that.
Alcohol wipes or a bottle of alcohol and some gauze and wipe it down, a Band-Aid. And then, everything after that, like I said before, everybody knows their own personal medical history the best. I mean, if you're an immunocompromised person or you're going through cancer treatments or something, you need to get in touch with your doctor and get appropriately taken care of. But to get that hook out, I mean, you don't have to go spend 6 hours in an ER for that. You could go out there and call your doctor and say, hey man, I just got stuck by a hook. I think I need a tetanus. Do you need to call me an antibiotic, stuff like that. Those things can be handled. But for, a guy like me, I mean, and I'm not proud to say, but what we used to do in the old days with hooks and pliers and all, and it was just totally archaic. We were causing more damage than you got a hook in you, and then you wind up having 2 holes. You rip, you didn't defeat the barb because you're either pushing through or ripping backwards. And this tool, I have a cartoon that I made because people at ICAST and other places where I go talking, they're like, well, I don't get it. What do you mean it disengages the barb? So I had a cartoon made of a cross section in the skin. and it's on my website and all, but it's a really good demonstration. Like the hook is in you, and there's a cross section, and it's through the skin, and when you engage it, it shows that when you push down, you can pull the hook out, because you're disengaging it from that. There you go. That right there. So that gives you a great illustration of exactly what we're doing, which is essentially exactly what the string method did, only this is now a tool. So you lift up, it disengages off the roof, and you slide it right out the bottom. It comes right out. Now, the only difference in that is that dermis at the very top won't stay open like that. There will be a little at the end, but you can't get around that part. But that, and that I think helped people to understand, what we're doing with this tool, what the string method did. But now you can use it backwards, ambidextrous, alone. There's a multitude of options. And it's funny, I love when the old salts will come up to me, and say, "Oh man, I just grabbed this and pulled that out, and I don't need this." And I'll say, "Well, do you fish from a dugout canoe? No. You bought a modern boat, right? Did you drive here, or did you ride a horse? You drove here, right?" So that was great then, but this is the new, better, faster, safer way to do things. I understand that, we used to sleep in caves. You sleep in a house now. Things change, and you need to accept that this has changed too. So,
well, and what a silly thing to poo-poo. Like, oh, you're gonna make it easier? Like,
I mean, wow. It's pretty funny. I have fun with those guys, but it is something that is a huge leap forward to solve a problem. And one of the things that, the $1 billion bass fishing world and tournaments and all, and I'll get those guys, and and some of the collegiate ones are 2-man teams, and the big ones now are guys alone. So if you're alone and you got to take a hook out of your arm, the cameraman's not going to help you. The guy with the scale, I don't know if he's allowed to help you or not, but this tool will get you back fishing as fast as that $100,000 fish that's right beside your boat while you're taking a hook out has every opportunity to swim away now while you're jerking around with a hook. And the guys, the collegiate guys, I'll say, if he gets hooked and you have to help him, who's winning the tournament? Who's catching that fish that's right over there in those weeds that you're drifting by right now? So it keeps the tournament guys fishing. It keeps the tournament guys, at least one guy in the water while the other guy's pulling a hook out of himself. Or, these pros that are on TV every weekend that are alone. I mean, they can, as fast as they move from one rod to another, they can weigh a fish, get a hook stuck, grab a DHukr, pull it out, and go right back to fishing like it never happened. Wipe it off, put a Band-Aid on it, and it's over. So, there's a lot of applications that ultimately for tournament guys could be a game changer or a tournament winning situation. So that's awesome. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. And it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. And I think when you said it's a lot of fun, I mean, getting hooked isn't, but it can get you back to the fun. Yeah, I guess so. That is all good stuff. And it is really nice to have kind of a designated tool for this, because like we've been talking this whole time, I know that the string method exists, but there's just something about that makes me so nervous, and I don't trust it.
I'm not here to knock the string method. I mean, when it works phenomenal, but it doesn't always work. I mean, there's guys that, God bless them, they had the courage to put on there. They missed 1, 2, 3, and finally the 4th time they got it. And I give them credit for showing that, because it's a great method, but it's not foolproof. Yeah. I've had some guys that come up to me, some of the best fishing guides in the world, and say, "Mike, I can do the string method like nobody's business. I mean, I am an absolute pro at it. But this makes it simpler, easier fish. You don't have to put anything together. You don't have to take, put braid together, even if you had it together sitting there, but the whole mechanism of doing it and needing a finger and a hand or another hand to do it. Those guys, I give them all the credit in the world too. They're like, "Man, I've been pulling hooks out by the string method forever, but this," and it falls on that same thing. You could drive to the store right now on a horse but you don't because you have a car. You know, you can
Well,
do the string method, but you don't need to anymore. It's faster and better.
Well, and I like the fact that you can do it yourself, because me personally, I don't have a whole lot of anxiety with like the needles or the hooks or like, you know, doing stuff. As long as I'm the one, I know how far I can go. I know I can anticipate my own movements. I cannot control what other people do. And so like this brings a situation that one is frustrating. Then it brings on some anxiety because then you got like either a hook hanging from yourself or a fish and a hook hanging from yourself. And then you have the anxiety of somebody else telling you to calm down while they're like wrapping straight, you know. So like when you have just the tool, you can grab yourself, you can pop it out yourself.
I have actually had guys come to the ER with the hook on the back treble. I mean, the fish on the back treble and the hook in their hand. The guy came with a bass still attached to the lure, and the lure in his hand, the whole ensemble. I have a picture of it.
Oh my God.
You get some really unique stuff. And, you know, it was a lot of fun for me. I mean, like you said, it's not fun to get hooked, but, you know, like I said before, not you know, proof of concept falls on the guy that made it. Not a lot of people volunteer, but, you know, I have one video out where guys were like, well, what about 2 out of 3 treble hooks? And I'm like, I'll do you one better, man. I'll do the Grand Slam, World Series, Super Bowl of hook removal on it. I got a super spook, and I put 2, because there's 3 treble hooks on a super spook. I put 2, 2, and 2 in my arm all at once and pulled 6 hooks out at once. Now, I'm right-handed. I put it in my left arm and did it with my off hand, just to show that, you know, in the weirdest, most unpredictable circumstance ever, probably a 1 in a billion, you could still do it. So, you know, and I give people all that. What about a circle hook? Well, I stuck a circle hook into the web of my thumb here because, you know, circle hooks have to go around a corner to really be effective. And so I came up with this big scenario. I'm like, listen, you're in your boat, you're fishing for permit. You go to grab your line and you slide down your line to find your hook so you can put a crab on. The boat moves and that hook goes up over your hand and gets you right there, which is, you know, I had guys call me and say that's where I get it. So I stuck one in there and popped it off on video, and just to show guys that, you know, I'm not just shooting words out. I'm willing to stand by them and put these hooks in me to prove it. And you know, I probably had more hooks than most people ever will get in them, but, you know, I had to prove the concept of this tool, and I don't mind doing it because it's an awesome tool, and it's worthwhile for me to show them. And I'm not a squeamish guy, so it doesn't bother me.
I've watched every single one of those videos. I just couldn't believe it, and it is true. I highly recommend if it doesn't bother you watching that kind of stuff, I recommend going out and looking. Because if you haven't sat here and listened to us ramble on for almost an hour now, and you're not convinced, then go watch the 4 minutes worth of videos, and you'll be convinced. Then
they're awesome. And you know, it's funny because I'll be at a show and I'll have a short sleeve shirt on, and people will be watching the videos that I have, you know, looping behind me at the show, and then they'll look at me, look at the video, and go, "Is that you?" And I'll go, "Yeah, that's my tattoos. That's me." They're like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "Well, what do you think that guy is?"
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not me, then that guy's crazy. So it's a lot of fun. You know, I love meeting the people, and I love being able to feel super confident offering a product to the industry and to the medical field that I think is worthwhile to help people, you know, on both sides, to keep you fishing and to keep you out of the ER and save you money, save you a trip. You know, a lot of blue collar guys, that one day of fishing is a treasure. And if it gets screwed up 10 minutes in because you get a hook in you and you wind up wasting the rest of your day in the ER, man, you got to wait till next month for a day off to do it. You know, that's a bummer. So
Well, and the other fabulous thing is, to be honest, the time of year that's coming up. There are so many people that are about to start buying gifts and stuff for the holidays.
Yep.
And this is another one of those things that if you have that fisherman in your life and they have one of everything already, they don't have this yet.
Yeah.
That's what that you stole one of my exact things. I'm like, if you have a guy, a boyfriend, a husband that you just don't know what to get him, or he doesn't need another camo shirt, and you're not privy to, I guarantee you he doesn't have this. I mean, he might, but this is pretty new product, and this is pretty unique. So it would rock his world if he got one of these.
That's awesome.
And I'm gonna get you one.
Oh,
oh my gosh. But I'm hoping that, one of these days at one of these expos, we will run into in person, because that would be a whole bunch of fun to see, I guess, in person. But in the meantime, we have your website, and I think we posted a link in the comment section. So whether people are watching from Facebook or YouTube or wherever, you can click on that link. Otherwise, it looks like your name, DHukr tool.com. So everyone can go and check that out. And other than that, thank you so much for being here this evening to talk about this. It's been really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure. It was absolute pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. Really cool.
Yeah.
And I do hope we run into each other at a show sometime. That would be fun.
Yeah. And to the people at home, hopefully we will run into you guys too at a show or an expo, or maybe even out on the water. And otherwise, we'll see you guys on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.